Hi, welcome finally to the 280 Media Design 1 After Effects slideshow tutorial. I have been meaning to make this tutorial forever, and now it's finally happening. Let's get right into it. Let's go to the Finder. You should have downloaded already the slideshow images from Learning Suite. There are 8 images inside the folder. They range from things like pictures of a brain to the Pope to horses playing the accordion to BYU things. So let's start off by importing these. Now we could do one of two things here. We could drag all these in to the project window, or we could just simply go to File, Import File, and select all of those images. I'm just going to shift click. I'm going to click at the top and I'm going to shift click on Campus Rainbow. I'm going to import them all just as footage, separate images there. And one cool thing that After Effects does for you, if you drag a group of selected images into the timeline, even if you don't have a composition open, it will bring up a little dialog box that asks you, what do you want to do? I want to make a single composition. I want to use the dimensions. I don't really know which one I want to use the dimensions. I'll probably change it afterward. I want my stills, since it's a slideshow, to be 4 seconds long each. And I'm going to click OK. This is my comp. This is not a very good name for a composition, so I'm going to hit the Command K, and I'm going to call it BKB Slideshow. I'm also going to change the dimensions at this point to 1920 tab by 1080. 30 frames a second. The duration of the entire composition should not be 4 seconds, so I am going to click on this 3rd field from the right, which says 04, and change that to 40. Leave my background color black, click OK. There we go. That is a much more memorable name, BKB Slideshow, and not a 27-digit long number. Okay, when I did this in class, we decided, oh, you know what, the brain. Let's start with the brain. The brain is a good place to start. I'll zoom out a little bit by hitting the comma key or the less than key, whichever you prefer to call it. Less than makes more sense in this case. So I can see a little bit around. Now the brain, as you can see, there's a little bit of sky behind the brain coming from that BYU image. I want to expand the width of this image to be at least the width of my composition. I'm going to shift that bottom edge to the bottom of my composition, and I'm going to go to Layer, Transform, Fit to Comp Width. Fit to Comp Width is going to make sure, I think the scale that it does, yeah, in this case it just scales it up 101.1%. I never could have guessed that. I could have trial and errored it, but I like to use exact measurements when I can. So we're going to start off with this brain. In fact, I'm going to hit return. Let's see, select this layer, hit return, and I'm going to call it brain because I don't love these long file names here. If that doesn't work for you, if you select a layer and you hit return and it opens up the dreaded layer window, just go ahead and right click or control click on the layer and go down to the bottom and say rename. Okay, I happen to know that this very first image is going to fade in. So what I'm going to do is, at first, I'm going to lay down an opacity keyframe. Everybody knows that opacity in After Effects is the letter T. I just hit the word T, and we can now see the opacity property revealed. However, if I hit Option T, that's going to lay down an opacity keyframe. What you may or may not know at this point is that to jump 1 frame or 10 frames in After Effects, you hold down the Command key and hit the right or left arrow. See, I'm jumping 1 frame at a time by hitting the right directional arrow key repeatedly. If I hold down Shift and Command and then the right or left directional arrow keys, that will cause me to jump 10 frames down the timeline. And if I do it 1, 2, 3 times, that's a full second. You can always double check where you're at in time by observing this number right here. Now I want to jump to, let's see, 10 frames. Oh look, I got it exactly. I'm on 10 frames. I'm going to hit Option T to lay down another opacity keyframe, and I'm going to jump back to the beginning to 0 on my timeline by hitting the Home key if I'm on an extended keyboard, or Option Command left arrow, which will jump back to the beginning on a laptop, which I am on right now. I'm going to type in the number 0 into opacity. Oops, you know what? Let's scoot these off to the side. There we go. Now it's going to fade from black into full color. Okay, I'm going to zoom out of my timeline by hitting the minus key. Let's get these way out of here. And I want to jump to the end of my layer here by hitting O. I will jump to the in point of any layer, and O will jump to the out point. And I know that I need an opacity keyframe at the end of this layer, so I'm going to hit Option T here. I'm going to jump back 10 frames on my timeline by hitting Command-Shift left arrow, and then Option T to set down another opacity keyframe. And I know that this one needs to be 100 because all this space in here needs to be full strength. However, the last one, I'm going to use my navigational arrows here. I could also hit J or K, K to jump forward between keyframes. J is go to the previous keyframe, K is go to the next keyframe. But I prefer to use these most of the time for accuracy because I often have so many keyframes that J and K doesn't help me because it stops at every single keyframe on any layer. I keep throwing in all these trivial bits because you will probably find it useful if you can remember. Anyway, this last keyframe for opacity on my brain layer needs to be 0%. I'm going to type in 0, and now we have a layer that fades in and stays and then fades out. Not very exciting, and I think when I did this in class, we did a zoom in, a scale. Let's see, yeah, let's do that again. Let's go to the beginning, let's hit I, let's reveal scale. Now we already have opacity showing, the opacity property showing under the brain layer, so I'm going to hold down Shift and hit S so I can also reveal my scale. I don't have to reveal it before I lay down the keyframe, but just for clarity's sake, I'm going to say Option S to put down a scale keyframe. I'm going to jump to the very end. Now we can't see the brain at all, so we're just going to have to trust that this is working. But I'm going to type in at the very end something like 110. And as you all know, you don't have to add the keyframe when you're changing properties if you already have one on the layer because it will automatically add it. So I'm going to type in 110. Since the proportions are locked, it's automatically going to scale both X and Y up to 110. Now let's set our work area to the end of this layer where my current time indicator is by hitting the letter N on my keyboard and then preview, spacebar. Fade in. Slow pan, slow zoom rather, and then fade out. That is exactly what we need. Okay, good. Let's do the next layer, which is going to be, let's see, you know what I want to do? By the way, to select between layers, what I'm doing right now, I'm not moving the mouse, I'm simply holding down Command and the up and down directional arrow keys. That allows me to select like this. So what I'm going to do is select my brain layer. I'm going to hit O to jump to the end, and I'm going to hit Command down to select the layer below. See how layer number 2 is selected? And then I'm going to hit the left bracket key. Left bracket will move the endpoint of this horses playing accordions layer to the endpoint of my brain layer. It might be a little bit too early in the scheme of things to introduce horses playing accordions. What else do we have? I'm jumping 10 frames at a time by holding down Command-Shift right arrow right here. Yeah, that's better. Let's stick with that BYU shot, this BYU shot, and then to the Pope. Okay, that's good. So I know that we want this horse thing to go down. I'm going to drag that down there. And since I think these three are going to be next, sorry, I'm supposed to be using keyboard shortcuts. O to get to the out point, and next layer down is Command down arrow, and then left bracket moves layer number 2 to this point. Actually, it doesn't need to be, it needs to be aligned at this, let's see, it needs to be aligned at this keyframe right here. So I'm going to jump to that second to last keyframe on brain and hit left on my currently selected layer so that it will fade in. As soon as the brain starts fading, the flying BYU man will be visible. If you started at the very end, then you'd see black and then a flash of BYU blue guy. Okay, let's get these bad boys out of here. Dragging those out of the way. Zoom out a little bit by hitting minus on the keyboard. If you hold down spacebar, you get this hand which allows you to pan around, just like in Photoshop or Illustrator. Also works in the timeline and the comp window of After Effects. As you can see, this image is wider than the composition, so we could do a couple things here. You know what? I know that we're going to be moving this image because I like this image to fly from right to left, so let's just leave it at this current scale. And you know what, on this one we're going to do the transform. We're not going to do the opacity first, we're going to do the opacity last. So let's do position first on this one. I'm going to hit I to go to the beginning of Flying BYU Man, and I'm going to hit P. Now, I can't see my BYU guy, and that's part of the reason I am not doing opacity first. So let's just make sure that my BYU layer is the only one I can see now by hitting the solo switch, which is this plain circle right here. And I'm going to click that on my Flying BYU Man. And with our position property revealed, I'm going to drag our guy down to the bottom right as far as you can go without cropping him off. And then I'm going to lay down a position keyframe. Option P. I'm going to jump to the end of this layer by hitting O, and I'm going to drag my layer up until it's see the right side of the image. That's about perfect, isn't it? I'm going to pull them up a little bit. There we go. Keyframe automatically added. Now I'm going to let you in on a little power user tip here. If I want only the current selected layer to be within the work area, or rather, if I want to set the work area to the length of the currently selected layer, it's Option Command B as in boy. And then I can hit spacebar to return. Okay, so that movement is pretty good. Let's now add in our opacity keyframes. Let's go to the beginning by hitting I. Let's Option T to lay down a keyframe. Let's Command Shift right arrow to jump 10 frames, and then Option T to add another opacity keyframe. Go to O, hit O to go to the end, Option T to add an opacity keyframe, Command Shift left arrow to jump back 10 frames, Option T again. Now what we need to do is jump to the beginning and set the opacity to 0, jump to the end and set the opacity to 0. There we go. Don't forget about I and O. Those will help you, especially when creating slideshows like this. Okay, awesome. All right, instead of jumping to the very end of this layer, let's just jump to the second to the last opacity keyframe by hitting this little navigational arrow. All right, and then let's grab the layer underneath and hit left bracket. There we go. Let's turn off solo for our BYU guy. This layer is, BYU's women's tennis. Wow, we got a lot of image there. Just dragging that up. Okay, tennis team. We're going to solo the tennis team layer now. That actually says tennis team in the file name there, but I'm going to delete all these other useless numbers. 10 team. I'm going to call this one, hit return, call him BYU Flying Guy. So I always do that type of second capital letter for some reason. BYU Flying Guy, BYU 10 team. Okay, we're ready to go. Let's solo the 10 team. Let's go to the beginning. And let's set a position keyframe down, Option P. Let's go to the end. Let's set another position keyframe. And drag down till we can see all of the tennis team. What do you think? Do we need anything more than that? That's good. That's good for now. Suppose we could start small. Let's add scaling. What the heck? Let's add a scale keyframe at the beginning. And let's hit O to jump to the end and add another scale keyframe. So I want the end point to be where it is currently at. So I'm going to leave that alone, but I'm going to go to the beginning of my tennis layer and I want to scale it down. I'll probably have to readjust, probably have to readjust the position as well. So let's just make it almost as wide as this image is. And drag that down. So as long as my playhead is over these first two keyframes, I can make these changes. I can drag and I can scale, and it's no big deal. Yeah, see, now we have scaling and panning. That's nice. Okay, opacity keyframes. I, Option T, Command Shift, right arrow, Option T, O, Option T, Command Shift, left arrow, Option T. Got our 4 opacity keyframes. You know what we could do? We should do, in fact, I'm going to do that right now. I want to nuke all of my keyframes on my opacity property. I'm going to hit the stopwatch, which if you hit the stopwatch ever more than once, it's going to nuke all of your keyframes and get rid of them all. So watch what happens. No more opacity keyframes. Let's go to the tennis team layer, go to the beginning of the tennis team layer, and let's grab our keyframes from BYU Flying Guy. I happen to know that the layers are the same length, so I can do things like this. I'm going to click the word opacity, which selects all opacity keyframes, all of my opacity keyframes. And I'm going to hit Command C to copy all of the opacity keyframes off BYU Flying Guy. It's very important that you paste in the proper place, though, and I want to paste these opacity keyframes at the beginning of my tennis layer. So I'm going to hit I to jump to the beginning of the tennis layer, and then I'm going to paste. Then I can avoid all of that shenanigan with Option T and jumping to the beginning and end. All of these layers are going to have the same opacity keyframe, so why not copy and paste, I ask you. Let's get to the next image, which is, let's see, we don't know because we're soloed on our tennis team. It's the Pope. Okay, so let's jump to the second to the last opacity keyframe of our tennis team and hit left bracket on our Pope image, and then let's solo our Pope image. Okay, this is a very large image, as you can see here. So what we're going to do, you know what, let's set the width of this image to the width of our composition by going to Layer, Transform, to comp width again. There we go. Another thing we're going to do, by the way, that was Option / or question mark. That causes your composition to be fit within the comp window. We are going to move the anchor point of this Pope image right onto the Pope's face, so when we zoom in, it will be a more targeted zoom onto his face. We're going to grab the pan behind tool, or the anchor point tool, which is, the hotkey is Y, by the way. It looks like this. This is what we're going to use. Okay, and we're going to click on our anchor point, and we're going to drag it right on top of Pope Benedict's face, the former retired Pope Benedict's face. Hopefully that is not disrespectful to him. Okay, now when we scale this, it's going to scale from that part of the image, which is what we want. Let's select this, hit return. This is Pope driving in the Pope Mobile. Let's just call it Pope Mobile. And let's Option S to scale. Let's go to the end by hitting O, Option S, scale. So at the end here, we want to scale up dramatically, don't we? Let's go all the way up to 100%. 100%. There's the Pope. Okay, and that's pretty much all we're going to do on this slide, is just zoom into his face. So, guess what we're going to do? We're going to select all opacity keyframes from the tennis team. We're going to copy. It doesn't really matter where your playhead is when you copy, as long as you have all of them selected. The way that you can guarantee that you have them all selected is by clicking the name of the property whose keyframes you want to copy. So Command C on opacity, jump to the beginning of the Pope layer, I, and then paste. Now, we can't see our opacity keyframes, and we know that they're working because we can't see the layer, but our keyframes are invisible because opacity is invisible. So I just hit T so I can reveal those keyframes. Now I want to see all my keyframes. I want to see my scale and my opacity and anything else I may have done to this layer. So I'm going to hit U. The letter U reveals all keyframed properties on a layer. If you hit U twice, it reveals any property that has been modified but not keyframed, or all properties that have been keyframed or modified in any way. I usually just use U though, because I only want to see keyframes. Sometimes you have to hit it twice to close it and then open it again. All right, Pope Mobile layer finished. What's next? Let's jump via our navigational arrows to the next to the last keyframe. Let's select this layer below and let's hit left bracket. Let's unsolo the Pope and solo this layer. It's our... Going from the Pope to... Yeah, I don't know about accordion playing horses. Let's move that down. Let's do this layer. Left bracket. Yeah, a guy riding a bike. That's much better. Let's solo him. Okay, we're going to do a fancy animation. Not transition. We're just going to fade these. But we are going to... Let's rotate this guy. Let's rotate our bicycling guy. Bike guy. Hit return to seal. Hit return to enter into the rename mode and hit enter to seal or return. Enter or return works the same on this particular function. Okay, bike guy. Let us do option R. Let's go to the end by hitting O. Option R again. Before we rotate anything, however, we will need to move the anchor point into the direct center of this little circular tunnel. So we're going to grab our anchor point or pan behind tool. We're going to grab the anchor point right there. And let's drag it into the center. Let's see, I'm going to drag it into the center of this back circle. Approximate center, that is. And I'm going to... See, we're revealing the layer underneath, which I don't love. So let's also add a scale to this. Let's go to the beginning eye. Option S to add a scale keyframe. Go to the end, and let's scale him up until we can't see. Yeah, there we go. We don't want to see that cutoff there. That's perfect. Look at that. Action-packed animation on our biking guy. So we've got scale and rotation happening here. Just rotated about 18 degrees and scaled up about 128 degrees. Now I can hear you asking, but you don't really want to scale images up, do you? Because they pixelate. I think if you're within 130, 140%, most of the time you're okay with scaling. Okay, what are we missing? We're missing opacity keyframes. Let's get them from the Popemobile. Select the opacity name, the word opacity on Popemobile layer. Command C to copy. Select bike guy. Jump to the beginning of the layer so that we make sure to paste them at the beginning of the layer. I. And then Command V to paste. Let's reveal our opacity keyframes by hitting Shift T. Shift T adds to the display of your properties. Yeah, it looks like we're good to go there. All right, jump to the second to the last opacity keyframe and move this guy by hitting left bracket. Let's unsolo bike guy and solo this one, which is nothing. Oh, you know what? I got the wrong layer. Let's left bracket this guy. Okay, German architectural windows. I don't know why I think this is in Germany. Maybe it's because I saw a building like this when I was in Berlin one time. Highly recommend going to Berlin if you can swing it. Berlin window is now soloed. Let's make it as wide as our... I know that my transition is just going to be an up and down pan here, so I'm going to go to Layer, Transform, Fit to Comp Width. Ooh, lots of windows. That's... You know what? We're going to need more. Let's cut out... David Alonso kindly provided this image for us. Let's enlarge that so he's out of there. Now, I'm not selling this or putting it online, so I'm not going to worry about that. This is a learning exercise that will not see the light of day. So hopefully David Alonso isn't watching this getting angry. Okay, we had to scale it up a bit because if you scale something perfectly to the size of your comp window, there's not much movement you can do. So Berlin window is now scaled to 61.4%. Let's go to the beginning. Let's set a scale keyframe. Let's jump to the end. Let's do Option S this time to set a scale keyframe. You'll notice I actually clicked the stopwatch to set that first one. Doesn't matter which way you use. Let's jump to the beginning again and click Option P to set a position keyframe because I'm going to move this one up. Jump to the end, and then I'm going to just drag my image up, and that will automatically set another position keyframe. Option / to zoom in like that. And we need some opacity keyframes. Even when you can't see the other layers, you can still copy their keyframes. Copy, go to the beginning of my layer, to paste, hit U, oops, U again, to reveal all of my properties, and hit, let's see, Option Command B, just to preview this layer. Fade in and move up, that's excellent, or at least good enough, let's say. Let's go to the second to the last opacity keyframe, select this layer, left bracket to move it. Let's unsolo Berlin windows. Okay, we finally have our accordion. Horses playing accordion. This is not, let's see, does this look stretched to you? It's just smaller than our window, that's its only problem. Let's scale that up a little bit. I'm holding down Shift as I drag. Click the dot, click the envelope first. What do we call this? The bounding box first, then hold down Shift as you drag to scale up in the constraint proportions. If you hold down Shift first, you can never select it. It's an impossibility. Let's see, in the past, I've done something that is not necessarily, from a design standpoint, excellent, but might be appropriate. It was a suggestion from a student. I think that was, can't remember who that was. Scott Franson. Your name is forever immortalized in this tutorial. He suggested, I think it was him, to scale to make it look like the image itself is being squeezed. And what we have to do that is reveal scale. Let's see, let's call this horse accordion. And if we uncheck this chain on our scale and we simply scrub the value in the X or horizontal axis, then we can do something like this. Now, not recommended to do a transition like this in a high-end design slideshow. However, for this, it's kind of a funny image, so let's do a funny animation. Let's go to the beginning. Let's lay down a scale keyframe, Option S, or click the stopwatch. Now, we need it to go in and out. Let's see. How about every half second or every 20 frames, let's change the scale. Oops, let's solo this. Horse accordion layer. Let's jump 20 frames. Command Shift right arrow twice is 20 frames. I don't like seeing the end, but we're going to make exceptions for this horse accordion. Jump 20 frames, and you know what? I'm going to copy this first frame by selecting it, Command C, since my playhead is where I want it to land when I paste, Command V. Then I'm going to select this one. Okay, here's what I could do. I could select these two. This one is skinny, this one is wide. Oops. What I can do is just select these two keyframes, copy them, make sure my playhead is on this one, jump 20 frames, and paste two keyframes. Jump 20 frames, paste again. And now I've got all of these keyframes accordioning repeatedly. There are ways to make things repeat, but they're a little bit more advanced, and we won't go over them right now. Okay, now that that one's accordioning, that's a verb now, I'm going to steal the opacity keyframes from Berlin window. Command C, go to horse layer, I to get to the beginning, Command V to paste, U twice to reveal all of our keyframes, unsolo, solo campus rainbow, and let's see, let's jump to the second to last opacity keyframe on horse accordion, select campus rainbow, left bracket. We've got this beautiful image of BYU at the end of the rainbow. Maybe we should use a little storytelling here. Let's use some storytelling techniques. Let's position the top left corner of the image at the top left of our composition. And let's add Option P, a position keyframe, to our campus rainbow image. Go to the end by hitting O, and let's position it. Let's move our bottom right corner of the image into play here. There we go. Now, if we wanted to make this a little bit more interesting, we could make the motion path. See, right now the motion path is a straight line. We could grab these handles and we could drag them out like this so it sort of mirrors the movement of the rainbow a little bit better. That would be fun. If you're not getting these handles, if you just see two dots without handles, here's what you can do. You can select all your position keyframes by hitting the word position, and you can go to Animation, Keyframe Interpolation, and in Spatial you should check one of these Bezier options. Bezier, Continuous, or Auto, and that should give you some handles. I'm not going to do that though because mine was already there. I wonder if my opacity keyframes are still on the clipboard. I'm going to hit I and I'm going to hit paste, hit T. Yep, they were still there. So I have, oh, you know what? We have been pasting that is awful. I've led you astray. I have led you astray. It's okay, it's an easy fix. That's really frustrating because we are how much into this podcast and I have been pasting fade-ins. We don't need fade-ins, we only need fade-outs. Curses. Well, it's an easy fix. I can show you how to fix it. All we have needed is just the fade-out. Man. So what we want to do, make sure your playhead is after the 100%. Oh look, my son's here. Oh thanks, he just gave me a flower from outside. Okay, now that I have my beautiful flower from my 2-year-old son, I'm ready to show you what we want to do here to fix the error I made. Sorry about that. We actually do want a fade in and a fade out on the first layer, but on all the rest we only want a fade out. So let's make sure that, here, you know what, let's just delete the first 2 opacity keyframes on this last layer. Make sure that before we go and do this, you have your 2 keyframes, your end keyframes going from 100 to 0. Do not do the following step unless this first keyframe on opacity says 100 and the second one says 0. Okay? Once you have confirmed that, then we're going to select both opacity keyframes and we're going to go to Horse Accordion and we're going to just reveal opacity. Let's jump to there. Okay, and we're going to do this with every layer, so maybe we should select all layers and hit T. T, there we go. We're going to undo Solo on Campus Rainbow. And let's do this. Let's zoom out a little bit so we can see more of them. There we go. Pull that down so we can see more of our comp window. I like to be able to see stuff. Okay, you know what would make this easier? Let's just set another keyframe at the beginning. Yeah, let's leave one 100% opacity keyframe at the beginning so that we can know where to paste these things, so that we can paste them easier, I should say. Even though there's no change in between the first and the second keyframes on opacity, it's just going to help us to paste, so let's just leave that there. So all 3 opacity keyframes, that's Command C, and then let's go to Horse Accordion. Beginning, let's erase what's there by hitting opacity, delete, and then paste. See that? These are our 3 new keyframes. The first 2 are 100, the third is 0. Let's go to Berlin window, delete all by clicking the word opacity, delete, go to the beginning, paste, go to the beginning, select all, delete, Command V to paste, go to Popemobile, I to go to the beginning, select all opacity, click delete, Command V to paste, BYU tennis team, I, select all opacity, delete, Command V to paste, BYU flying guy, go to the beginning by hitting I, select all opacity, delete, Command V, and then on brain we said we needed all 4 keyframes. There we go. That fixed it. We now have a beautiful slideshow of completely relevant and contemporary images. Let's leave our playhead there. Let's hit N to set the end of our work area. Let's go to the beginning of our timeline, Command Option 0 if you're on a laptop, or just the home key if you're on an extended keyboard. Hit B to set the beginning of our work area to 0. And if we preview, we should see this thing play back. There we go. This is not playing back at real time, probably because I am capturing this. This screen capturing is a little bit too much for it. Not real time, but still pretty smooth. I should have music playing. I need to put music here. Accordion music. Again, I never want you to use the accordion transition in any other slideshow you ever make. There we go. All done. Thanks for sticking with me, and we'll see you on the next tutorial.